during your lunchtime, I'm sure your bellies are full and your spirits are good, and you've got some more yummy drinks, and if you're as lucky as me, some dessert. I'm so excited. So this is we're kind of coming full circle, and we know we have just a little bit of time left before our beautiful Tanya, kind of wraps us up for the afternoon. But we wanted to make sure that you all had time to share out. So I'm going to pass it to Elizabeth.
Do you want to give us an overview of the day, everything that we've done? Or
Sure.
I can.
Yeah, would you?
I will do. So, pre-lunch, so we started the day introducing ourselves, and that was so wonderful to hear all the different ways that the marrow thieves might throw its tentacles back out into the world and into your classrooms. And then my mom and I introduced ourselves, and we shared a beautiful round of nettle tea and talked about nettles and shared a little bit of how we bring land-based learning to students that my mom works with by connecting the farm, but inviting students onto the farm to do things like nettle harvest and rosehip harvest. And then we got into go bags. And you all now, you have your go bags, right? And how are you as an individual and in your small groups, how are you going to survive the apocalypse? And what tools do you need? Both material tools, but also these themes that come up again and again in the Marrow Thieves around hope, joy, create. What are you living for? And hopefully we will get to hear about some of that from you all. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that what we do want to hear from is the first round is from your tables about from your one, designated speaker of the group about what you chose to. What are those 5 things that you chose to, as a group, to sustain you, and why? So we're so curious, and Elizabeth and I got some sneak peeks. And I'll just say this, I'm coming back to LeGrand during the apocalypse, and I'm hanging out with all of you. So actually, LeGrand is such a great place. You think about, it's a great place to survive. And so then after we have an opportunity to talk about the artifacts, we do want to come back and have some whole group conversation about, and maybe a table discussion, and also whole group if anyone wants to share about your coming to stories. And you'll notice we didn't ask you to share those. And in the books, you only share when you're ready. And there's some times that characters will ask, like Miwan, the elder, what happened to Wab? Why is she like the way she is? And he says, of course, that is her story to tell, and we'll wait when she's ready to tell it. And there's reasons to not tell. And there was a little girl in the group that they wanted to kind of shield from some of these stories, as she was growing up in the apocalypse. She knew nothing but the apocalypse. Other times towards the end of Hunting by Stars, there's also, when folks were wondering what was happening to one of the main characters, to Frenchie, and how did he get to where he was, this coming back story. And Miguan also said at that time, he'll let us know when he's ready, and we will hold loving space and love him, even though we don't know the full story. So we just wanted to give you an opportunity too, if you wanted to share your coming to narratives this afternoon as well. And then just wrapping up finally with what will you take with you today? Or what questions are you left with And of course, we could just spend 5 hours talking with you all about literature, and there's folks in here who could do the very same thing. And there's probably those of you who are still looking for some information or requests, and we hope to have a little time to do that. Did I get that right, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Who wants to share out?
Great.
So my group decided that we were going to take multi-use, multifunctional items. We decided we were going to take a pot because we can carry things with that pot. We can gather things, we can cook, we can dig with it, we can eat out of it. We could even also use it for protection if need be. We decided that we were going to take some kind of fire starter. We were thinking of, just a fire starter to keep us warm, to cook our food, to purify water. We were going to take our lovely plant and an animal identification book because it would help us identify where we were at in the world, the things that were safe for us to eat, how to utilize the whole animal and not just parts of the animal, and also to honor both our now needs and our future needs. And then we decided we would take a knife, of course, and we were going to take a sharpening tool for our knife and also use that as a grounding stone.
I know, right?
Wow, yes.
Thank you. Woo-hoo! Yeah. We should have like a survival meter.
I was like, yeah,
like, whoa. Exactly. Yeah, come on. Who's next? Great.
So I think my group was thinking more about our mental well-being maybe than our physical well-being, and so we thought about like a deck of cards, or something to entertain, to build community, a musical instrument as long as it doesn't put you in danger, the noise thing. We talked about a vessel, something for carrying, gathering, a journal to leave notes for ourselves or to make notes for ourselves or for other people, like a survival book. Liz has a survival book that is like how to basically survive the apocalypse. So it tells you how to do everything. And then as some sort of, you think about wanting, like in the California fires, you read about them like taking scrapbooks and stuff like that. That would be really hard in this situation. So like thinking about a token from home, like PK Hunger Games, and so being like a moment of, and then mindset. So.
Awesome.
Of course, we assume we all have guns, knives, rocks.
Oh. That's already in there. Of course. Oh my gosh.
We have our crossbow already.
Nice. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll share ours because it had a few similar things. When we're thinking about like things to entertain ourselves or like joy or like positivity, we had also set a deck of cards. We were thinking maybe on each card it had some information about plants or other things that could, maybe be helpful for us as we're going, kind of like those ones. And then a book of fairy tales, thinking of other like stories and things that provide like positive hope for the future. We do plan to write in the book as well because we couldn't take a book in a journal. We didn't have enough space. So that will also be our journal. A water filtering jug, kind of the sustaining, and some sort of outdoor survival book that has plants or identification of other things that we could eat, how to, basic like medical, things that we could do, wrapping a wound, that sort of thing. And then a multi-tool knife. One that has features like you've never seen before. Things going different in our imagine knife. So,
So when that tool comes into existence, remember us.
Yeah.
With your millions.
And if we can't have that, then just
Awesome. Thank you. That was so good. Connections. Huh.
We will go. We started with a family photo, so we can just remember our whole reason why, the journey that we are on and why we are trying to survive. A hydro flask for holding water, holding food, being able to probably cook in that and still be okay. Courage. We need to make sure we have some courage to go with this. A fire stick starter and a knife.
I'm already making the list in my mind of the things that people are all like. I'm seeing some really cool trends and also some really neat, like courage.
But also, you should take Taylor's backpack because there's some really good stuff in there. I had a look earlier.
Well, I did. It was at number 6. The distillery. Oh my gosh.
For wound care. For wound care.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So funny. Oh my gosh. Well, do you want to go ahead and go, team over here?
Yeah. So we had 2 minds that were really thinking through this, but we had a cast iron Dutch oven, and it was the brand that you.
Le Creuset.
Yeah.
Oh,
The nicest of all.
Le Creuset for
We
sure.
only get 5 items. We're gonna take
Yeah.
the nice
Yeah,
stuff.
we're gonna take it. Yeah, and then a lot of things were kind of redundant and multi-use as well. We had said a hatchet with a flint handle. So, yeah.
Tanya.
Yeah. And then you said, nobody else said this, but a tent with built-in sleeping bags and a solar light. And we talked about a microwave or.
This is not Harry Potter, okay?
This is the Harry Potter tent.
It's kind of that idea. All right. Yeah, just put the shading in there.
And then Tanya really helped us out on this one. We were really like depicting, should we go picture or should we go journal? And then Tanya was like, picture journal.
Boom, and that opened the doors to coming up with the idea of the tent
Yeah.
and the hatchets.
Yeah, we were thinking really outside the box.
We got a journal.
And then lastly, really practically, just like a backpacking water filter. So, yeah. That's ours.
Awesome.
It's like 15 items.
And we're gonna survive. When you're a number packer, you can tell. And thrive. Yeah.
With Le Creuset.
With Le Creuset.
That could be Le Creuset's apocalypse motto.
Oh my gosh.
Survive and thrive with Le Creuset.
But I don't know how long you could carry that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything about weight.
You're right. There were no weight limits. Oh my gosh. Okay, last but not least. Whoop whoop. You.
So we kind of went more like theme type things. Like it might actually be a thing, but it's really more about what it meant. Besides, we're taking all your bags too. We're just gonna.
Okay, so not a community anymore. Immediately torn down.
It's our community. So we had water because water is life, but we started with like water filters, whatever.
Like, yeah,
we just
life-
went,
a
we're
life
just going
straw.
with water of some kind. A cooking pot, not only for preparation, but because it's familiarity with what we've had, but also joy and sustenance and warmth and just that need for that. A paper and pen or a journal so that we can process our fears and our hopes and our plans. A hatchet and knife, not only because it's practical, but it also means to stay sharp or to stay gritty. And family photos, which are helpful for history and remembrance as well as just love.
I think I heard you all saying too that you were writing your own stories for the future too. Like that, I hadn't really thought about that. That having that paper and pencil, you're creating the stories, the storying for the generations to come. So cool. What do you think, Elizabeth?
I think you all are brilliant and are you're going to survive and thrive, even if you don't bring your Le Creuset. So that's what I think.
Yeah, amazing. What was the process like for you all in having this conversation? Like, what do you know, and then also hearing each other's. Would you change your list a little bit after?
Maybe just add things.
Yeah, I know
And a lot of those, like, like I had a deck of cards, like on my, like things like that. You just want to think about just trying to also like keep up your morale.
Yeah.
So.
It sounds like groups were very thematic. Like we're working on our mental health, we're working on our creature comforts over there. Practicality.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that like other people said were things on our list that we were like, because we kind of debated a lot lot about having a picture, having a journal, like, I don't really know between these two, so we didn't have like.
Yeah, not everybody can handle hauling that around. I liked the idea of the book. But then I was like, what book would I choose? That would be very hard if you knew that was like the only book you might be able to read for a very long time. Yeah.
And in the book, Frenchie has these tattered novels.
A never-ending story.
That's not the one I would want to read.
What were you saying, Elizabeth?
Oh, just that Frenchie throughout the novel shares that he picks up books in abandoned houses and that he cherishes them and they just become totally, he reads them so many times that they just kind of start to fall apart. But Mom doesn't have her fool's crow out here, but it's over 36 years old and it's one of those books. We all have those books, right, that we return to again and again and again. And that's the beauty of being a teacher, right? Is you might be the person that introduces that book or that text to your students. It's so powerful.
What else? What about these three tables? Any thoughts about would you change your ideas or any connections you made?
I asked if we would change anything, and we were all pretty satisfied with our list. A lot of things that we, heard, we had discussed and talked about, and then how could we, would we take that over this? And we just really wanted things that were multi-use, but also multi-meaning. So, because I just was talking about, before there was a written word, there was petroglyphs and there was always oral history. Yes. So those things you carry within you.
Yes.
And so there's no need to write them down. You need to write them down in today's time.
Well, we use the knife to carve to the tree, so we could write the tree. Nature is eternal, but so other people could come along and read it.
But if we're just writing it down, like just for us, because we don't want to leave a trail. If people are coming after us.
But would you want to leave a trail? In the book, there's a, if you are looking for, what if, Bethany's group and Valerie's group get separated? How are you going to communicate to them to reunite with each other? Let's say you tables were a chosen family together. And in the book, they do that. They carve Cree syllabics into the trees as a code for other groups of Indigenous families on the run to find each other.
I know in where I'm from is a very large underground railroad, helped with the escaped slaves and being really immersed in that. A lot of that was word of mouth. It was transferred in songs. It was following the stars and quilt patterns and stuff like that. But yet they were still very careful not to leave too much for fear that somebody would be able to figure it out.
And she writes about that in the book when spoiler alert, a large several different family units, chosen family units, come together in one spot through these Cree syllabics on the trees, and they have to leave the camp. And when they do, they erase all of that. And the part again, you see this theme again. Don't worry when the kids are like, well, how are we going to find each other? And so's off, and what are we going to do? And it's like, we'll find a new tree, and we'll trust that our family member knows enough, that we've equipped them enough with that knowledge, that oral history, for them to be able to find us again. You know, it's this recurring theme of preparing, preparing with like mental wellness, preparing with relationships to again be able to go through something hard and painful. And on the other end, there's always a future. There's always a hope that that person that you've lost is going to come back to that tree.
Thank you. Back to tables, reflections. I love that we had the socio-emotional, and courage and some of these characteristics, as well as guns and crossbows, Anything about your process or anything you would change or add or?
Say something about my process would be in an apocalyptic world. I don't see myself being a survivor. If I do not have things that help me feel more human.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, okay, well, instead of hunting, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'll have something to entertain myself. So that was kind of my priority because I just know myself. I'm like, oh, it wouldn't be worth it if I.
Dude, let's talk about teachers in the apocalypse, though. Oh my God, you guys are so needed. Oh my God. Yeah.
There was one thing that I thought of, like, afterwards. I'm like, my little tiny dog. Like, I would never, ever go anywhere without her. Like, she would be with me. And we would both be not surviving together. But, she's 2.5 pounds, and so she'd be tucked in. She'd be in my bag.
Fit in that little bag.
Pets. Well, we did mention what we would be wearing and stuffed in our clothes. You just said what's in the
I
go
love
bag.
that.
That's right.
That's super powerful.
Yeah.
We did talk about a dog, but also I wondered if, like from my perspective, when I wrote my own story, it was all about protecting and caregiving and so what I would want in my bag would be those things I could use to make sure everybody else is safe or I'm safe and that kind of thing. But I didn't think about not surviving.
That wasn't enough.
Think about it. I
So
just
you're
want you.
another tip.
He's just gonna hide behind you.
Yeah.
You're gonna.
Well, that's the thing. It's the perspective of that role you take on as a dad and as a husband. Then that caregiving seems to be the most natural thing. I need that stuff to take care of everybody. So I suppose our go bags would be collectively dissimilar, but a collection that would make the group more.
Yes, that's a really powerful. Miigwans is the kind of the leader, and Minerva. There's the elder female, and Miigwans is significantly younger than Minerva. My husband and I
have no idea how old
Well,
he
we
is,
don't really
though.
know. I just imagine But my husband and I talk about how, we would never survive the zombie apocalypse. We have no cardio, we're just not going to make it. So we might as well just enjoy life at that point and just, hopefully.
Find the whiskey.
There we go.
Can I pause this moment because I really want to bring the way that apocalypse and dystopian worlds can be super ableist, right? You have to have cardio. You have to be able to move quickly. You got to be physically fit, blah, 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 blah. But we see in examples of speculative fiction, right, beyond science fiction, those narratives being completely disrupted and turned on their heads. So look at Minerva.
That's exactly what I
Minerva
was going to
can't
say.
move. And there's also a 7-year-old child, and I'll kick it back to you, that bring their own strengths, right? They're bringing, this whole novel is about strength-based thinking and strength-based learning. And everybody is a little bit different. And together they find the way that Minerva brings them strength.
And so that's what I was going to say, that my husband and I would say we'd never survive the zombie apocalypse. That is framed in all the movies. But after reading the Marrow Thieves, was like, it is a completely different view. And Minerva, at much of the novel, they have to carry her. And at the point where they don't have to carry her any longer, they do mention, well, we are moving more quickly, but what we've lost isn't worth the quickness of our ability to move, because the loss is so great. And it isn't that Minerva runs fast or is really good at, hunting, but there are other people who are really good at that. But she holds the language. She holds so much knowledge of the past. A lot of the young people were born in the apocalypse, so they don't know a time before the apocalypse, but she did. And she was also really beautiful in so many other ways. And, spoiler alert, a secret weapon.
Ooh.
An elder woman who is challenged by mobility, and she's the secret weapon. I'm surviving the apocalypse. How about this group, Benny?
I was thinking about, usually when I attack something in life, I am a solutionizer. I bend rules, I don't break them. I bend them. I look for ways, and so, but I was following these, like I was supposed to do these things.
That's right.
Which is not my, and so we did this list, I'm like, I have to bring these 5 things, and then I was like, wait a minute, you guys bent the rules. You have to use the rules I use.
We're told it was a dystopian.
And so, exactly, but which is so outside of my norm of like normally be like, I could make this thing, do these 5 things. And so I was laughing that it was so not my character.
Well, we really appreciate that too, because when we came up with this, we were thinking, like, what would you put in there? It was like, well, it's a go bag. You can't fill it with everything you want to have in it. It would be too heavy. And then, of course, we had things we wanted you to have in it, like your rock, and your journal, and all these things, and a bag. And so we spent a lot of time like debating. Okay, 5 things. They can have 5 things.
No, you're like,
they choose.
10 things.
10 things.
No, only 5.
Yeah.
I'm glad we chose 5 because I think that what I'm hearing is that their 5 was enough to be creative, but also limiting enough to create a container where you had to leave things out. And I think that would be dynamic and powerful for small groups of students too.
And, just quickly, and then I'll get right to you, is the, what kind of laws or rules or agreements do we have in the apocalypse? That's, because there are differing in this Marrow Thieves world. There's the folks who are running the schools. And what's really interesting is in those schools, my husband was, listening to the book while we were prepping, and he stopped and said, does the marrow work? Is it helping people dream? That's never answered. So is the extracting and therefore killing Native people worthy of the idea? Well, of course, we know the answer to that, right? But again, like, whose laws, whose rules, who has the power? And here we have these, these folks who are on the run, and some of them don't run, some of them fight. And so that is such a great perspective. Like, what, I'm reminded of Sandy Grande, who's one of my favorite Indigenous scholars, wrote an incredible book called Red Pedagogy, and she's looking at Native education specifically from this Red Pedagogy framework. And she says about, the conditions that Native folks have had to live in for the past 200, 500 years. If all your choices are poor choices, what choice do you have? And I feel like that's also a very big theme in this book that we won't, spoiler alert, into. But, characters in here have to make really difficult choices for the survival of the group. But these choices, and in some movies that we watch, the choices, something happens and the character responds and everyone's like, yeah, oh, we're all saved. But when you have to make a poor choice for the betterment of the entire group, well, that changes you. And I love that about this book because the characters, and I think the young folks on Thursday night, the OTP students were saying that one of the students brilliantly was saying that the character Frenchie in this book, if you looked at character on that page 1 that Elizabeth read, and you saw Frenchie at the end of this book, you might not recognize him, because this changes us. Anyway, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important for us to wrestle with.
I was just, this is the fact about 3 steps, so beautiful, but just thinking about like, I'm backpacking with my kids, right? We share the weight, right? Someone's carrying the poles and someone's carrying the tent or the footprint or what have you. We're sharing the weight, and just being able to have that faith that you're going to have that community to share the weight with, like those missing items from your bag, that you're going to run into someone else that has those, and that's part of your community.
Which is not individual thinking, right? That is like collectivist ideology. Love it. Other thoughts? Shall we
move on?
Yeah. I love this. Thank you all so much. This is so much fun. All right, so continuing with our large group discussion, now we can kind of like meta out a little bit. We wanted to actually give you the bags, like just, you've created your go bags in an image of it in your journal. We wanted to give you actual bags, and actually they are really good for you bags. They're, you can use them for, carrying vegetables and fruits in. It's like cotton, organic, it's good for you. But also as a possibility of holding this curriculum for you. So you can take this bag with your journal and your beautiful stone and your ideas and your coming to, and your seeds and your game, all can go in there, and maybe something else that's coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also, we want to, have a conversation with you all as we wrap up today about what will you do with your go bags now that you have them. And are there any favorite parts of your go bags? Maybe something you would like to share with everyone.
Or your coming to story.
Or your coming to story. And then any final questions or reflections or next steps. And maybe we could do just a couple minutes at the table to talk about it with each other, and then see if there's some really good things you'd like to share out full circle.
So who would like to share with the bigger group? Any reflections?
Sorry, we were just talking about seeds, and one of the things I was so my family and I, we were in Ecuador, and we were hiking around at 13,000 feet elevation, and we were all looking at all the flowers and going, do you recognize that? Do you recognize that? Because I had been one of my kids' 6th grade teachers, and they do the 6th grade wildflowers. And a huge number of wildflowers at 13,000 feet elevation in Ecuador are identical to the ones here in the Grand Ronde Valley, that our whole sixth grade, which is crazy, but then we had this whole conversation about the birds are the ultimate go bag. Because they're taking forward and coming back to the land and bringing that land and moving it around. And then we're talking about our islanders that we have at our schools and thinking about what did they have to leave? And could you imagine the conversations you have in your classroom, building community about what would you bring or what did you not bring? And those of you who've never left, who have been here their whole life.
How about other folks and other tables, conversations about what to do with your go bags now, or if you're willing to share a favorite part, whether a coming to story or maybe another story of joy to help us get through these challenging times. Or if you're taking this into your classroom.
I talked a little bit about how like I've done different activities in the past of like what things would you take to survive, or like tons of other times and stuff, or like we had read Hatchet and that was part of that, is like what items would you take with you. And I feel like I always had a really hard time choosing or coming up with ideas, and I also always thought I don't see myself as a person that's going to survive in the apocalypse, you know, so like I don't really know what I'd take. But like this one, like coming up with a list this time with like all of the background and all the things we discussed about like their history and like other things, it was like the easiest it felt like to come up with a list than any other time, especially like considering the things of like beyond just like survival, like, you know, for like joy or community and like sense of purpose and that sort of stuff. So it was just interesting to me because in the past I've had a hard time where like even some kids, you do those activities and they're like, well, I don't really know, but all of that like background and basis, and it's really important for that.
I love the fact that none of us said cell phone or technology of any sort. You know? In the practical sense, it would all would maybe have a Kindle for the one who was going to not survive over here. I love the idea that when we really think about long-term survival or down to, we can give up that thing that probably steals so much of our life right now, right? I wonder if in a generation from now, it'll be, well, I gotta have my iPhone, gotta have my charger, gotta have my solar. I mean, I wonder if holding on to these things is gonna be as easy for the next generation as it seemed to be for us. I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about technology. It didn't even come up in our conversation at all.
Just assume we wouldn't have it. We assume there's nowhere to charge and so it's gonna die soon.
Yeah. Except for them, they have a charger built into the
Solar charger.
I just took 2 stones, by the way, but so, and I apologize for being here for a moment. I often have rocks in my pockets because I just like rocks and find some fun ones around. But I was just sitting in my doctor's office and gave my first rock to the little kid next to me who was not having such a good day. So now I'm going to make sure to put some shiny rocks, some prettier rocks in my to-go bag to have for exactly that purpose.
You know, I'm loving that you gifted your rock, because gifting is so important and also that you had already imbued it with joy. Oh, you know.
Yeah, nice rock. I liked it.
And in Blackfoot ideology and culture, we put things in categories as animate and inanimate, and rocks are animate. And so that was alive and loving. So thank you for bringing that. And then just as far as seeds, Elizabeth talks about, as a farmer, there's a,
Don't get me started.
but you know, you said something this week as we were planning about the life force in a seed and its ancientness.
Yes.
Could you say something about that?
Yeah. So seeds, you know, Mendel's peas, right? Mendel's peas. Any science people? But what that means is that there are generations. Think about like corn. I use this with students all the time. Corn used to just be a grass, just like you see outside, just like a grass with a little, you know, a head of seeds on it. And indigenous scientists and bioengineers took that and transformed that into one of the most life-sustaining foods on the planet right now. And that seed holds all of that genetic memory, right? All of those from grass to now, and there's so many different types of corn, so many different uses for corn. And it's all held in this one tiny little kernel. And in Blackfeet, the word for seed has mystery in it. That it's this beauty of mystery and potential, right? That there's all of that past connection, the present of being able to enjoy that seed and spread that seed. And then it also contains the potential and the food, right? The food for all of those seeds to go into the future. Is that what you were thinking?
That's good, isn't it? Some good stuff there. Just kind of thinking about some comments that were made in this reflection, and there's an indigenous group in Tofino in British Columbia, Victoria Island, and they have forest guardians, and that are identified by tribal elders to take care of some of the old growth forests that are there. And there's an island. And so there was this documentary that was done, a show, like a Canadian travel show, and it's a justice oriented kind of show. And so the gentleman who is going on the journey and to this island was introduced to this 1,500-year-old cedar tree. And there was planks that had been removed very gently and beautifully for processing. And it was a tree that also was the home of many medicine plants around it and lots of berries. And so the person who was the host said to the guardian, wow, you all really do a great job with sustainability. And this guardian said, sustainability is about the lowest level of what we're trying to do here, which, the host was like, truly, this is sustainability at its finest. And so the Native gentleman said, and this is my rendering of, I don't have it memorized, but believe me, this was during a time when my college was doing strategic planning. And so he was like, our strategic plan for the cedar trees and for this land is we think 400 years in the future, not 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, 400 years. So when you think about those seeds and you think about this 1,500-year-old cedar tree that's been loved and protected because it can't pick up its roots and run off, when the environment changes. So we have to do what we need to do. So I like to think about that and you probably have heard 7 generations before and 7 generations in the future. But how and kind of coming back to the themes of these books are around climate catastrophe and climate change. And there is some hopefulness about what we don't want this to happen, right? We don't want both coasts to disappear and that there's barely any sunshine and there's lots of rain and not enough drinking water. We want to see a future that's better than that. So I just want to thank you all for helping me to think about that a little bit more too. Anything else that you're sitting with that you would love to share?
What I think is really important, or what I was thinking of many times, we've done the island, what would you take to the island? But if you can imagine doing this at the beginning of the year with the kids, and even with, I can think right now of 4 novels I do with different grades where we could pack a go bag and after we read it say, would you still keep the same things in that go bag? Or how would it change? But even as a whole class, kids are in this giant state of change trying to figure out who they are, what they're doing, what their family is, what's important throughout one year. we read this story about Anne Frank, what happened to them and their go bags, and just, it seems like it'd be a great culminating thing to show people that we are resilient, we can change. You don't have to be stuck to what you thought you had back in the fall, because now you're a different person.
Yeah.
I don't know if it sounds cliche, but teaching is an inherently hopeful profession.
Yeah.
Teachers, that's what we do. Like, we are planting those seeds, helping kids, and we'll sometimes never ever see the result. Yeah. That's what we do every day.
Not cliche at all. Any remaining questions? Does anybody want to share their coming to stories or their hope stories?
But it's interesting when you think about creating a new identity relative to a character you may or may not possess. But then what do you want to do with that? Where's the power of that? What do I want to do differently, or do I want to maintain that I already do? I think I do well and I have that identity, but differently, what do I want to be? Something entirely different. It's an interesting idea.
I love that because our coming to stories happen throughout our lives.
Yeah.
There's cycles.
Yeah, there's cycles in our lives. And so you have like the Frenchie's coming to story. He's 8 at the time that this coming to story takes place. So our little ones have coming to stories. Lily has coming to stories. But then, when you're in your 20s, you have probably a lot of coming to stories, And then those of us who are in the twilight of our careers or getting to elder status, we still have coming to stories too. I like that. Just is very that is hopeful.
Well, it's interesting. This week, my daughter bought a house, and she didn't ask me about it at all, other than, hey, I just bought a house. And that's a coming to story, and the fact that she would have generally always asked me, good idea, bad idea, what should I do, that kind of thing. It's interesting, right? And she didn't need my opinion, but it's interesting that that's her coming to. She's coming into the need of not needing to ask something. So.
Any questions or coming to or joy stories on this side? Le Crusade.
I didn't get to the coming to story because I was spending a lot of time on my go bag.
Oh, I love that. Your go bag.
Yeah, so it has superseded but my joy story, I did get to my joy story, and it was interesting because Christian and I obviously wrote them separately, but we had similar stories. Both of them were in Hawaii and had to do with being in the water and just being in the moment. Like, it's not often that you're just fully present in the moment. You're usually thinking about what you're gonna do for dinner or what you're gonna do next, or and yeah, it was just swimming with my kids in the ocean, and it was just so fun and so joyful, and it was fun because Christian had a similar story too.
So I'm gonna sit at that table.
Yeah.
Jeez.
We're small but mighty over here.
Christian, not to put you on the spot, but you've been to every one of our events these last couple of days.
Not my choice. Not my choice.
Yeah.
But what kind of, concluding thoughts, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to respond.
No, that's great. I was actually thinking about my go bag. And the two things that we brought up that we did not put in our actual thing that I said was remembrance and dreaming. So I feel like a lot of the times I don't always, we talk about a post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic world. And it's we don't ever remember who we are, and who we want to be. We don't dream about who we want to be because we're so stuck in that moment and everything. So that was kind of the biggest thing of remembrance. Yesterday, you guys talked a lot about your guys' past and everything, and that's something that I really want to get into is my past. My grandma's Cherokee, and so it's I've always been willing and wanting to ask her things, but I've always been oh, does it bring up some weird scrutiny or anything like that. There's always some uncertainty, but you guys have been great, very lovely, and yeah, thank you.